Hey guys, how's it going? Today we're going to talk about how to install Postgres and how to get it to work with your Discord bot, so you can actually have persistent data stores for things like counting bots or whatever you might need to store data for. So a kind of a prerequisite to this video is you're going to need Docker installed. You can install Docker from this page, and I'll put it in the description for whatever operating system you're using. I'm on Ubuntu, so my install is going to be a little different than your guys's, but whatever environment you're using, Docker for certain works. The other thing we're going to need is pgadmin. Pgadmin is a tool for Postgres, so you can actually look at the database, create databases, and kind of run queries and stuff to make sure that you had it set up with Docker, right? Okay, so once we have Docker and pgadmin installed, we can go ahead and actually install Postgres. So the first thing we're going to run is a sudo docker pull Postgres. If you are on a different operating system, it might just be docker pull Postgres. Sudo is obviously in Ubuntu or Linux specific thing. So if you're on Windows or Mac, it's just going to be docker pull Postgres. The next thing we're going to do is, and I'll put this command in the description of the video, is we're going to run sudo docker run, and we're going to pass in some environment variables. We can talk a little bit about how these work. So we're telling Docker to run. We're passing in these two flags. The environment variable Postgres user and Postgres password. These are what we're going to log into Postgres with. We're going to map port 5432, which is the Postgres port, into the Docker container. We're telling it to store the data here. One important thing with Docker containers is if you don't mount a volume, when you restart the Docker container, it's going to wipe all your data. And we're going to give it a name. So I called it postgresql. I already have a container named that, so I'm going to call it postgresql2. Okay, so once we've looked over the command and we understand it, we can go ahead and run the Docker container. You can see it starts here. We can verify it's starting with the docker ps. That's going to list the commands that are running. We see Postgres 10 is running here on 5432. It's been up for 3 seconds. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and go over to our pgadmin here. Open this up. Drag this over here. We're going to register a new server. So register server. We're going to call this RatPhd. We're going to go to connection, localhost 5432. The username is RatPhd. The password was password. Now, on some operating systems, this host might not be localhost. You might have to look up specifically on Docker what host you have to use for your localhost, but for me, it's going to be localhost. We're going to press save, and we can see this database here. So once we have this database connected and loaded to, we're going to create database, and we're going to, we'll call this one counting bot. This database is created here, so this is kind of a prerequisite, to having being able to hook up the bot to the database is having the database exist. So once we have all that infrastructure stuff set up, let's go ahead and actually clone the repository and make a template of it. So as you know, with all my videos, I have a template repository I use for you guys, and you can use it too. I'll put it in the description. You can go press use template. We're going to call this Discord.js Postgres template. And I'll actually make this a template repository for you guys if you want. This will be a Discord/command template with Postgres integration. And so, like I said, I'll make this a template repository so you guys can actually just make a template. You don't have to go through the work of creating it unless you want to, but I'm going to go ahead and create this repository. It'll take just a second. Now that I have this here, I'm going to go ahead and clone this. So you can go to wherever you have your GitHub stuff living. So I clone this repository in. So let's go ahead and open this up. Okay, so we're going to actually want to install 2 things for Postgres. The first thing is going to be an ORM, which is an object relationship mapper. It's going to be called sequelize. And the second thing we're going to do is PG. So you can npmi, sequelize, and PG. ORMs are really good for writing SQL queries. If you don't want to write raw queries and you want to be able to have code first models, that means that your models are going to be in your code. And sequelize will handle creating the tables and syncing things and doing migrations and stuff like that. So once we have that stuff installed, let's go ahead and create this .dev.env file that's required by all of my repositories. Again, if you've never seen this before, you go to source libs config. You can see that in all of our repositories, we always use .env as a package. That's going to load a .env file from the working directory up here. And we're going to load our config values in. So we can see a Discord token, Discord client ID, and should create commands. We're going to also go ahead and create a few environment variables. So we're going to have database host. We'll load that as process.env db host. We need Postgres user. We need Postgres DB. I just noticed I have a typo up here. Let's go ahead and correct that. And then the last thing we will need is Postgres password. So process env.postgres password. Oh, and if you want another environment variable to tell the database to resync when you make a new table or column, we're going to make another one called force db reset. Now, what this flag is going to do is whenever you restart your bot, in this case, it's going to run with node_mon. Whenever you save, it's going to actually resync the database. This will wipe all your data. This is going to create new columns that you've added, new tables that you've added, and I usually run it in the development environment. But once you get to a point where you start needing to keep your data, then you might need to actually turn this off and then manually create some kind of SQL migrations or something like that. So once we have all this stuff created in here, we can go to the env file and we can actually add these variables. So if we open this to the side here, we can see that we need Discord token, Discord, we need client ID, we need should create commands, and we're going to say true. We need database host or DB host. We need Postgres user, Postgres DB, Postgres password, and force db reset. And we're going to do true. And one thing that I like to do over here actually is we want to actually cast this to a Boolean because these values get passed in as a string. So when you say force db reset equals true here, you're going to actually get a string true here. So you want to actually, make it a Boolean so it's easy to consume. Okay, so now that we have these values here, we can go and fill these things in. So the user for Postgres is RatPhd. The database that we created, I think, was called RatPhd. The password was password. The rest of the stuff is good. The DB host for me is localhost. And then we need to fill in these client ID and Discord token. Something that's super important though, when you do this stuff is if you mapped your Postgres to a different port, you have to specify it here. The default port for Postgres is 5432. So if you left it the default like I had it in the command, then you're good. So let's go ahead and actually get our Discord token and client ID and stuff like we have in the past. So we're going to discord.com, developers applications. We're going to get a new application. We'll just call this one Postgres. Doesn't matter what you want to call it. We'll go to bot, build a bot. Yes, I do. Now we need to grab a client ID and we will paste that in here. And we need to grab a Discord token. So we're going to reset the token here. You need to enter your two-factor code if that's the thing that you have enabled in Discord. And we'll press copy here and we will paste this in here. At this point, we should have a bot that's able to start. This base repository has a few basic commands built in. So if we npm install and then we npm start, oh yes, we need to actually go back here and enable the server members intent and the message content intent. So now we should be able to start this again. The bot should start and you should see that it registered. Perfect. So we have a working bot as it is. So now we need to add the Postgres stuff. So what I like to do usually is inside of this libs folder, I'll create a folder called database. It's going to have an index file. This index file, we're going to actually, instantiate the database and export it from the file. So a few things that we will need here. We're going to grab sequelize from npm. So sequelize, just like that. And then we need the values from the config file. So we're going to say Postgres user, Postgres DB, Postgres password, and that should be it. Oh, I think we need the host too. Postgres, or DB host is what we call it. We're going to acquire that from the config file. So we're going to go out1 config, and there we go. We should have the values. Okay. Next piece is we need to actually initialize this, the sequelize instance. So we're going to say const sequelize equals new sequelize. Inside of this, it's going to take the database name, which is one thing that we forgot to grab from here. Actually, we completely forgot it inside of our config file. So we're going to actually need to do the database name. So the DB name is process.env. What did we call it inside of here? Postgres DB. Oh no, we actually do have the database. So we actually need to add Postgres DB up here too. So we have that available. So we're going to say Postgres DB as the first parameter of SQLize, Postgres user as the second, Postgres password as the third, and then we need to create an object as the last one, and it's going to be host is DB host. So we need to actually grab this from here, DB host, database host, and the dialect we're going to use is Postgres. Why does this dialect here? So if you decided that you wanted to use a different version of SQL, a different dialect, like you wanted to use MySQL or MSSQL or something, ORMs make that really easy. This ORM that you're using SQLize is compatible with any of the SQL dialects. So if you decide you want to swap, you just change this dialect here and it'll reconfigure all your queries for that different version of SQL they're using. That's why it's really nice. So the last thing we're gonna do is export this connection to SQLize. Stupid autocorrect. We're gonna say module.exports equals SQLize. And right here, we have a working database connection that we can actually configure. So the next thing we're going to do is actually create models inside of the database. And I'm going to create one test model for you guys just to show you guys how it works. So we're going to create an index file. And this index file is not going to do anything except export the models that we create. So let's create another file called user.js. And we're actually going to create a model inside of here. So we're going to say const db equals require index. Remember, it's out one index. We don't want this index inside of models. We want the index inside of database. And we're going to say const model and data types equals require SQLize. So from here, we can actually go ahead and create this. So the first thing that I like to do is create a class called user extends model. This is going to extend the SQLize model. And we're going to create one method inside of here called associate. What does this do? This actually doesn't do anything, and we'll consume it later. But if you want to create a foreign key and primary key relationship inside of Postgres, you need some way to do that. And if you tell the model how to associate the two models together, it'll do things for you, like join data together automatically and things like that. So you can just say query for all users and join guilds onto that, and that'll give you a join piece of data without having to do any work of actually writing out the join, because SQLize will understand the association between the model and it'll automatically create that for you. So we don't have any data to associate here, but we're going to leave this here. The next thing we're going to do is come out of the class and we're going to say user.init. We're going to create two objects inside of here. The second object is going to be, we're going to say paranoid true. This is going to create audit things, so created by and updated by flags. We're going to say SQLize. We're going to pass in the DB. I'm going to say model name is user. Now we need to actually create the fields inside of the user. So say you want to actually track the users in Discord. A really good way to do that is to look at the Discord snowflake. So we're going to pass in Discord snowflake. We're going to say that its type is data types.string, because Discord snowflakes are, a string, and it's unique. So this is going to say it's going to have a Discord or snowflake column, and it's always going to be unique. There can't be two users with the same snowflake. So let's say module.exports equals user. So once we have this model created here, I go back to the index file usually, and I say const user equals require user. And then we want to export this as module.exports equals the brackets of user. So now we can import this later. So now the last piece to actually get this working is going to go to the index file. And we're actually going to initiate the database. So what I usually like to do is I will import the database up here, db, we will say libs database. You can actually see we're getting some errors already. So what did I do here? Oh, I accidentally imported something twice. Perfect. Okay, so now that we have that fixed and everything seems to be running okay, we imported the database at the app level, the index file and the source. And so now we need to actually tell Postgres to actually get everything synced up and ready. So we're actually going to go const db, and we're going to say const models equals require libs database models, and that's going to do that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is inside of the startup function, let's go ahead and after it enables the interactions, let's say logger.info connecting to database. I'm going to say login info completed database connection. And then inside of here, we're going to do two things. We're going to create the associations, and then we're going to instantiate the database connection. So we're going to say object.keys. We're going to pass in models for each the element inside of here, just like that. And then we're going to say models of element associate models. So we're going to call the associate method on each class, like I talked about before, and we're going to pass in the models so it can actually resolve and create those associations together. And the last thing we're going to do is await db.sync force, and then we need to actually grab this this config value. So let's see if here we go, right here, force db reset, and we're going to say force db reset. One thing to note while you're doing this is until you make new commands, once it's synced the first time, we can go ahead and turn this should sync commands to false and restart. You're going to see that it skips this entire process of connecting the database. And so it makes it really easy. Okay. I made a typo. Okay. So you're going to see here, it says connecting to database. You see all this SQL stuff that logs and completed database connection. So right now we have a working SQL connection inside of our Discord bot. You can see the stuff logged here. So as you can see here, it's dropping tables and it's creating a table called users, and it has the values we want. So now if we go to PHP admin and we look at the RatPhd database, we go to schemas, tables, and users. So you're going to see here, if we select all rows, we can see we have a Discord snowflake here and everything created perfectly. Okay, so now we have a working connection. We have working models. How do we actually consume this? So it's super easy. So what if you want to keep track of any user that types inside of a Discord server, but you don't want to have two users? Remember, you want to have unique rows. So it's super easy. Let's go to event, message create. We need to grab the user model from here. So we're going to say const user equals require database models, just like that. So now we have the user's value. Let's go ahead and create a new user. So first, let's say const user equals await. We're going to say user.find1 where Discord snowflake is e.author.id. This is going to find any user inside of the database with the e.author.id. Okay, we need to make this async because you can only await inside of an async function. And then we're going to say if user.get, it's going to grab the value from the database query. If there's no user.get, we need to actually create a user. So let's say let's here, and let's say user equals await new user Discord snowflake is e.author.id.save. This is going to create a user whenever they type. If they're already in the database, it's not going to do anything. So let's test this. So what did we not do earlier? We need to add this bot to a server. So let's go to OAuth 2 URL generator. Let's go bot administrator just to make things easy. We're going to copy and paste. And then I'm going to add this to one of my test servers. So let's add it to my test server, authorize. So you can see I added Postgres bot. Okay, perfect. So let's type test. Let's take a look at our bot. So you can see we got an error here. So we can't call get because the user might not exist. So let's say if no user test. Now we see that it's worked. So make sure you change this user.get to just if no user. So if exclamation point user, you can see it inserted the user. So let's go ahead and take a look in the Postgres table. You always will have to refresh if you have that database sync command on because it drops the table literally. You can see we created the user here though. Okay, so now that we have this done, what can we do next? In later videos, I'll talk about how to make a user bank. So to have like points and be able to deduct and add points to it. But the possibilities are endless now that you have a Postgres table synced up here, a Postgres database synced up to here. So you could create this user and you could create user bank. You can create a relationship between there. You can keep track of guilds. You can do so much stuff with the power of having a persistent data store. And this is just a really quick way to get Postgres set up. So my next video, I'm going to talk about how to make a counting bot that works on multiple servers, and maybe some more advanced topics on how to use Postgres in regards to that stuff. But that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like the video. And if you have any questions or concerns, as always, please feel free to let me know in the comments and I'll be glad to help.